Hey everybody, I'm Mike. This is Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, and you are watching The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 11:30 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards, fire up your fingers, and come join the conversation. Hey everybody, it is Friday, June 19th, 2020, and you are watching The Right of the People. Thanks for coming out and stopping by and deciding to watch this wonderful, spectacular show. Hopefully I'm not crack-a-lacking out there with my microphone. Hopefully the sound is good and everything is well. Let me know, sound off in the chat, if something is funky. Speaking of sound off in the chat, if you're out there in the viewership and you are not saying anything in the chat, well, I don't know you're there, so I can't say hi. And remember, guys, this is a two-way conversation. This is not just me talking to you. This is us exchanging ideas and opinions. And if you have a differing opinion from what I or someone on the panel or someone out in the chat does, feel free to express it. However, I try to keep things at least PG-13 at the most. You know, we want to try to be semi-family friendly anyway. So be respectful, be non-explicit. Although I do, from time to time, slip. I am a human being. Thankfully, I don't have to worry about the FCC, right? But, you know, just be respectful. That's all I ask. My mods, the guys with the blue wrenches, are out there and they will take care of things. They know what I want and know exactly what to do. Okay. If you are new to the show, welcome. And I hope you stick around and be part of the conversation. Speaking of welcome, I would like to welcome my esteemed panel members. First off, we have the one who strikes at night. Night Strike. How you doing, sir?
Shout out, be infringed.
That was rather subdued for you.
I'm a little tired. I've been away way too early this morning, so.
Okay. Well, next up, we have the lovable yet irascible Squibload.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, now he's trying to be all even and non-irascible. Awesome.
Causing drama late on a Thursday night.
Next up, we got the tactical pickle himself, Calaveras 32 Special. How you doing, sir?
Pretty good. I appreciate the invite there, Budget.
Hey, no problem, man. You are always welcome here. Speaking of always welcome here, we got the terror from Indiana, Elizabeth Warren's worst nightmare, Roll Call 219. How you doing, sir?
She's a disgusting human being. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man. No problem.
That's the Mohicans.
Let's see who we got out there in the chat. We got Gun Loving Grandpa out there as the first. We got Green Badger Outdoors, ACW Moto. Have not seen you around before. Welcome to the show. As I said, be part of the conversation, but try to keep it clean and respectful to everybody. David Campbell's out there. How you doing? Chris Fulmer, Jason Stewart, DTemp62, Squibs pulling double duty, Steven Sheets. How you doing, Steven? Good to have you around. Let's see who. Philo's in the house. If you're out there and I didn't say hi, let me know you're there. If you're watching this on the replay, say something in the comments below if you have an opinion on whatever we've discussed. I read all my comments. I'm nowhere near big enough yet to where I don't do that. So chances are I will be engaging with that in some way. So let's dive into what we're talking about today. You know, I have been following and putting out on the show the 10 cases that have been kicked down the road and kicked down the road and kicked down the road and kicked down the road by the Supreme Court. Well, if you see my thumbnail, you already know what they did. They denied cert to all 10. That means they will not be heard by the Supreme Court. I am horrifically disappointed in this. I have been saying since day one of the Trump administration that it was nothing short of divine intervention that he got elected and kept the Supreme Court out of Hillary Clinton's hands. And I still believe that is the case, because even though we're not getting quite what we would want out of the Supremes at this time, what we would be getting if President Clinton II had made the nominations would have been far, far worse than a big nothing burger.
Budget.
Yeah, go ahead.
I gotta jump in here and say something about
go ahead.
about Supreme Court justices. It's just, they think that because they're appointed by a president and by the Senate that they are above the law, and that whatever they deem and rule is the law of the land. When the fact is, the law of the land is the Constitution, and if they don't rule on the side of the Constitution impartially, without prejudice, without bias, then they're not really a Supreme Court justice. They're not trying to uphold the law. They're just trying to, play politics. And, another thing, they work for the people. They're not working for the Senate. They don't work for the president. They don't work for the Department of Defense. They're supposed to work for us. And we can't hold them accountable when they don't do their job. What the hell? We can hold everybody else accountable in the damn government, but we can't hold them. They get to be put on a pedestal? I'm sorry, but that don't work. That don't work for me.
By design, the Supreme Court is not accountable to an electorate so that they aren't forced to bow to political pressure, so that they can rule based upon their knowledge and interpretation of the Constitution.
But the problem is, a little more than half of the Supreme Court right now is politically biased in one direction.
Well, they all are. They're human beings. It just so happens that right now we're not getting what we want.
Well, let me ask you this, Budget.
Sure.
When the idea for the Supreme Court come up, they're appointed by the president, right? And it's a lifetime position. They can choose to step down for whatever reason.
Correct.
Before they die. Otherwise, they're there till they die. And that was kind of part of the whole system of checks and balances, right?
Yes.
Do you think that when that was written, when that was decided, that they were looking at lifespans of people at the time and thinking that there would be a rollover of Supreme Court justices on maybe a more frequent basis because people didn't live as long back then? Or that's kind of irrelevant?
That is an interesting point that I had never considered. You could be right.
Now, somebody could argue, well, yeah, but if you believe that, then the Second Amendment's only about muskets. So,
well, and that is the counter argument for sure.
I've got a counter argument for that for the Second Amendment is only for muskets. Well, your First Amendment is only for pen and paper with an ink quill pen and a guy on a horse, not the internet.
Well, and that's kind of the point. That's what he's saying. Is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Squib, the fact that, despite the fact that these were the conditions that were in play whenever the document was written, it says what it says and it is what it is. And, times have changed. Technology has advanced, the printing press, television, radio, et cetera, et cetera. Firearms technology has advanced, et cetera, et cetera. And, well, the same applies to the lifespans of the Supreme Court justices. And despite the fact that that may not have been the case when the Constitution was written and the Supreme Court was instituted, that's what is in play now.
Right. And I'm not saying there weren't people that lived into their 90s back then. There were. It wasn't as common, just like there were I can't even think of the word here. Other than there were repeating guns back then and whatnot, right? So I'm not saying that it was totally out of the realm of concept, but I'm just wondering if because it was a little bit more common, that maybe that was the way they looked at it. Now, then you start getting into the whole spirit of the law thing, right? So I just think that for some of it, it has to do with since they aren't accountable, what Night Strike is saying, and you're explaining why they can't, why they aren't elected as a protection for. I don't know. It just seems that when they're in there for 40 years or more, that seems to be more of a problem for me.
Well, the same can be said of Congress too. I really wish they had term limits. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as I was saying, if you think the Second Amendment only applies to muskets, then write a letter in inkwell pen on parchment paper and have it delivered to me by a guy on a horse. And only then can we discuss why you're an idiot.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get into it. I will. We'll go over a couple articles on the topic. First is from BearingArms.com from June 15, 2020 by Cam Edwards. Breaking: SCOTUS denies cert impending 2A cases. The Supreme Court dealt a serious blow to the future of Second Amendment litigation Monday morning by rejecting nearly a dozen Second Amendment-related cases that it had been considering in conference in recent weeks, despite 4 justices announcing in the challenge to a New York City gun law that was mooted by the High Court that they wanted and were ready to hear one of the many 2A cases pending before the court. Today's orders take them all off the table. Here's a quick look at the cases denied by the Supreme Court in its orders today. Pena v. Horan, challenge to the California's microstamping law. Gould v. Lipson, challenge to Massachusetts carry laws. Werman v. Healy, challenge to the state's ban on so-called assault weapons. Rogers v. Gruel, Cheeseman v. Polillo, and Ciolek v. New Jersey all deal with challenges to New Jersey's carry laws and the justifiable need provision for a carry permit. Malpazzo v. Palazzi takes on similar requirements in state of Maryland. Culp v. Raoul challenges an Illinois law barring residents from 45 other states from applying for non-resident concealed carry license, while Wilson v. Cook County takes on Illinois County's ban on modern sporting rifles. And Mance v. Barr is a case challenging the ban on the interstate sale of handguns. Justice Clarence Thomas, joined by Justice Brett Kavanaugh, released a written dissent to the denial of the Rogers v. Gruel case, blasting his colleagues for refusing to hear the case. It appears that a handful of states throughout the country prohibit citizens from carrying arms in public unless they can establish a good cause or a justifiable need for doing so. The majority of states, while regulating the carrying of arms to varying degrees, have not imposed such a restriction, which amounts to a ban on the ability of most citizens to exercise an enumerated right. The courts of appeals are squarely divided on the constitutionality of these onerous justifiable need or good cause restrictions. The D.C. Circuit has held that a law limiting public carry to those with a good reason to fear injury to their person or property violates the Second Amendment. By contrast, the First, Second, Third, and Fourth Circuits have upheld the constitutionality of licensing schemes with justifiable need or good reason requirements, applying what purported to be an intermediate scrutiny standard. One of this court's primary functions is to resolve important matters on which the courts of appeals are in conflict. The question whether a state can effectively ban most citizens from exercising their fundamental right to bear arms surely qualifies as such a matter. We should settle the conflict among the lower courts so that the fundamental protections set forth in our Constitution are applied equally to all citizens. Why didn't the Supreme Court take a single one of these cases, given the fact that we know there were 4 justices in favor of hearing a Second Amendment-related challenge? The most obvious answer is that the 4 justices were unconvinced that they would have a 5th and deciding vote to uphold the right to keep and bear arms. Chief Justice John Roberts joined the majority in both the Heller and the McDonald decisions, but it could be that there are doubts among the conservative wing of the court as to how Roberts would rule in a future case. It may also be that while justices like Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh all agree that a Second Amendment-related case needs to be heard, the 4 simply couldn't agree on which case or cases should get the nod from the court. We don't know for sure, because the Supreme Court is one of the last remaining leak-proof institutions in Washington, D.C., but I'd say that for now, the theory that Roberts is a question mark or has indicated opposition to these 2A cases is the most likely theory. We'll have much more on today's decision and what it means for the future of Second Amendment jurisprudence coming up on BearingArms.com's Cam and Company this afternoon. So, yeah, go back and watch that. Go ahead.
I don't think Justice Thomas is the only question mark when it comes to firearms.
I'm sorry, what?
I don't think the Chief Justice is the only question mark when it comes to 2A related stuff. Based on the history of some of the other justices, I'm not entirely sure that they're as pro 2A as some of their, I think like Kavanaugh's an example. I don't know if he's as pro 2A as he sounded when he wrote his what the heck is it called? His piece where when he disagreed on the moot of the New York case.
Yeah. Is it me or is he sounding a little bit robot-y? Have our mechanical overlords gotten to him?
He's a Dalek.
Okay.
Exterminate.
Let's see. DTEP62 says Roberts has voted with the liberal wing of the court, and I can't help but wonder what Obama has on him. He also said Roberts has a really bad case of rectal cranial inversion. I kind of gotta agree. Let's see. David Campbell asked, did RBG vote? Maybe Ruth Bader Ginsburg voted. I don't know. I'm still not ruling out the theory that it's weekend at Ruthie's. David says justifiable need. It's my right and I want to. That's right.
Talking about with the Constitution and when it was written and compared to what it is now. I realize it would be a severe slippery slope that would be hard to control, but with people living longer now than they did when it was written, and the potential health concerns that arise due to that, I almost have to wonder if there is something like any kind of updates that we need to do to the Supreme Court system to help encourage those who are due to health concerns aren't able to actually perform their duties as required to resign. Maybe not be able to force them out, but maybe to encourage them to resign.
I think I understand what you said. That might be that would be interesting. That would kind of solve the Ruth Bader Ginsburg issue, which David Campbell out there asked, when was the last time we saw proof of life from RBG? I don't know. It's been a while since I've heard of her appearing in public at all.
It's her and Kim Jong-il everybody's wondering about, right?
Yeah.
Or Kim Jong-un, or
I think it's
whatever. Il's already bit the bucket.
Un is Illin, I don't know, whatever.
I know that Clarence Thomas had some pretty scathing remarks about this issue. This is from Breitbart, it's by A.W.R. Hawkins from June 15th. Clarence Thomas, SCOTUS protects abortion, looks the other way on Second Amendment. Justice Clarence Thomas suggested on Monday that the Supreme Court of the United States tolerates requirements on the exercise of the Second Amendment that it would not allow to be applied to abortion or free speech. The specific case, Rogers v. Gruel, centered on New Jersey's requirement that citizens show justifiable need for owning a gun before a handgun permit is issued. Thomas dissented to SCOTUS's rejection of the case by reasserting that the Second Amendment protects the fundamental right of the people to keep and bear arms. Yet in several jurisdictions throughout the country, law-abiding citizens have been barred from exercising the fundamental right to bear arms because they cannot show that they have a justifiable need or a good reason for doing so. One would think that such an onerous burden on a fundamental right would warrant this court's review, Thomas said. This court would almost certainly review the constitutionality of a law requiring citizens to establish a justifiable need before exercising their free speech rights. And he's absolutely correct. And it seems highly unlikely that the court would allow a state to enforce a law requiring a woman to provide justifiable need before seeking an abortion, Thomas said. But today, faced with a petition challenging just such a restriction on citizens' Second Amendment rights, the court simply looks the other way. And I believe the good justice has it square on the head there. The court would jump on cases on those other two issues with both feet. Well, actually, all 18 feet. But the Second Amendment, it's like, who cares? Do you think he has a point? Bueller.
I don't want to comment on it.
Okay.
I see where he's going with it. I see where he's trying to do the comparison, but
you think it's an apples and oranges thing?
Okay. For me, abortion and the Second Amendment do not mix. They need to stay in separate rooms. Whenever anybody on our side uses that as part of their argument, they totally destroy the Second Amendment argument. That's why I kind of just don't think I should say anymore.
I hear what you're saying, because the one is an enumerated right, the other is a created right, one that isn't actually there. So I understand what you're saying, and I agree. But I also think that Justice Thomas is absolutely correct in that, was it Thomas? Anyhow, yeah, I think he was absolutely correct when he said that if it were a case dealing with abortion, they'd jump on it. And they would. And it's sad that they'll jump on something that's not an enumerated right in the Constitution, but they completely ignore one of the very few shall not rights. I think it's sad.
It's for the reason Night Strike said. It's politicized.
Yeah. Let's see. Philo says the only permanent solution is constitutional carry. And Green Badger Outdoors says, I can't remember how, but there is a way to remove a Supreme Court judge. Yeah, there is. I just can't remember what it is either. It has been a while since I've tried to check that out. Philo said, Squibb holds his thoughts to himself. Everyone take cover. Something biblical is about to happen.
Maybe he's holding it in and he's just waiting for that right match to light him off.
That could be. Well, a gentleman by the name of Lawrence Keene, writing in the Federalist, has some thoughts on what's happening here with SCOTUS. Mr. Keene says, SCOTUS gun case denials signal conservative justices don't trust Roberts with the Second Amendment. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision to pass on nearly a dozen gun rights-related cases is breathtaking, not in the denial of hearing any, but in the seeming admission that the conservative associate justices think Chief Justice John Roberts can't be trusted to protect the Bill of Rights. The nation's top court denied writ of certiorari to 10 cases. The National Shooting Sports Foundation, the Firearm Industry Trade Association, submitted amicus curiae briefs in 2 of those cases. Those cases, Warman v. Healy and Mance v. Barr, centered on fundamental rights to acquire firearms to exercise the right to keep and bear arms. The Supreme Court's denial lets stand Massachusetts' ban on modern sporting rifles and a ban on the sale of handguns across state lines. The court also denied Pena v. Horan a challenge to California's Unsafe Handgun Act, which bans handguns in common use for lawful purposes. The denial of writ of certiorari tells court watchers the conservative associate justices don't trust Roberts to uphold the liberties as written in the Bill of Rights. Enough to call a case, but they don't. The Supreme Court requires 4 of the 9 justices to agree to hear an appeal for the nation's highest court to take the case. Those watching gun cases were hoping for good reason that finally, after a decade of silence from the court, the 4 votes were now there. 4 justices, including Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh, have all recently expressed frustration with the court's unwillingness to address infringements on Second Amendment rights. Thomas previously noted the Second Amendment is a disfavored right with this court. That pattern, disappointedly, hasn't altered. In his dissent this week, Thomas again drew attention to this fact in the denial of certiorari in Rogers v. Gerber. Rogers v. Gerber. Maybe he meant Rogers v. Gruel, I think is actually the case. But today, faced with a petition challenging just such a restriction on citizens' Second Amendment rights, the court simply looks the other way, Thomas said. These 4 associate justices could have voted to hear any of the 10 petitions, but not all 4 chose to bring the cases before the court. That's telling inasmuch as it is disturbing. The fact that 4 justices who complained the court needed to hear Second Amendment cases passed on 10 chances to do so tells us much about the court's swing vote. 1 or more of the conservative justices are in essence telling us Roberts cannot be trusted to interpret the Second Amendment as written or faithfully apply the precedents of the Heller and McDonald decisions. He ruled in the 5-4 majority in both those cases. By refusing for more than a decade to accept any Second Amendment cases, the court has allowed the lower appellate courts to blatantly defy the court's precedents and invent a Second Amendment analysis not rooted in the Constitution and inconsistent with the court's landmark 2008 Heller and 2010 McDonald decisions. Heller protected the pre-existing individual rights to keep and bear firearms that are in common use. Nearly 18 million modern sporting rifles are in circulation today, used for lawful purposes daily, including recreational target shooting, hunting, and self-defense. McDonald found that Second Amendment rights are enforceable against states seeking to deny those rights of law-abiding citizens. Regrettably, in the Roberts Court, the Second Amendment is a constitutional orphan that will be treated as a second-class right. Court watchers have long said it's important to have the right case before the Supreme Court on gun rights. That's essentially what Kavanaugh wrote in his partial dissent of New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, Inc. versus City of New York. There was plenty for the justices to choose from on the 10 cases they just passed over. They could have easily found cases that would have called for the Supreme Court to faithfully apply Heller and McDonald precedents, stand for the Bill of Rights, and send a clear message to lower courts to stop legislating from the bench. Instead, the 4 conservative justices are now telling America it's not just the case that must be solid, but also the court. That means the 2020 election will put the direction of the Supreme Court back into focus, just as the 2016 election did. 4 years ago, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican, Kentucky, decided not to act on President Barack Obama's nomination of Judge Merrick Garland. That made the ideological control of the Supreme Court a central question in the election that propelled Donald Trump to office, resulting in the nominations and confirmations of Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. The future of the court once again hangs in the balance given the age of the justices, particularly Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who missed a month's worth of arguments this session and has battled serious health issues. At 87, she's the court's eldest justice and has vowed to continue to serve. The justice's sudden silence speaks volumes. The Roberts Court sees the Heller and McDonald decisions as dead letters. It's going to take a new justice to stand up for American rights. The next president and Senate will determine whether the Second Amendment will mean anything in America or whether it will continue to be treated as a constitutional orphan. I can't see where this guy would be wrong on any of this. I think that it's very likely that it all is boiling down to Roberts might vote the other way, so we're not going to bother and get a bad decision. On I guess the theory being that no decision is better than a bad one. What do you guys think? Do you think a no decision is better than a bad one, or should they have taken a case and by God made a decision?
I'm willing to risk it. There's people out there that aren't, but I'm willing to risk it. I get what you're saying. If there's a guarantee of a bad outcome, I suppose no outcome is better. But I mean, come on, we got to roll the dice sometime, right?
You know, I just want to know in budget. When you go to work and you do your job, do you get to pick and choose how you do your job, or do you do your job from start to finish every day the same?
Who, me?
Yes, you.
Well, given the nature of what I do, I kind of pick and choose how I do it when I get there and depending upon the situation that's presenting itself on that day. But again, what I do isn't your typical job. Right.
But I'm trying to correlate this, okay? So just follow me for a second, okay? But when you get to work, you're given a certain set of tasks, and you have to finish them. Yeah, you can probably arrange how you get them done, but you have to get them done, right?
Well, yeah, I have certain things that I have to do every day, and
okay,
as long as and I have a certain set of guidelines within which I have to do them. I have a lot of latitude within those guidelines and within those boundaries, but yes.
And my problem with the Supreme Court as it is right now is they are refusing to work with what's brought to them. They are refusing to do any sort of work whatsoever to actually make a determination on Second Amendment cases. So basically, they have a whole set of work. Yes, various other different things they have to work on too. But they're taking all the Second Amendment stuff and shoving it in the deepest, darkest corner in the office that they can find, and they're not doing any work on it. They're basically choosing to take half of their workload and kick it off the desk, off to the side, into the garbage can because they can't deal with it. And if you tried to do that in any other profession, what would happen?
Oh yeah, done.
Yeah. You see my unhappiness at the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Ghost Tactical's in the house. He says, Guten Abend. Guten Abend, Herr Geist. Wie geht es dir? Let's see. David Campbell says, things are getting kicked down the road right now. Now, they didn't kick these cases down the road again. They kicked them right off the road. They threw them over the overpass and semi ran them over. And Gabriel says, no case is better than a bad outcome. David says, he's willing to risk it.
That's what you need. That's what you need for your next thumbnail. You need some sort of car accident.
That's it.
That's right. My question with this whole sure outcome thing, you know what? What human institution is there that is 100% sure that there's no possible way for it to go a different way?
Never.
Bingo.
Matthias says maybe if the court had taken up a case, the ATF wouldn't be so eager to look at pistol braces now. Welcome to the show, by the way. I don't think I've ever seen you here. Maybe you're right. I think that in the absence of definitive guidance from the court, we're going to see alphabet agencies do stuff. Then we're going to see them do stuff we don't want them to do. And Gabriel points out, and rightly so, that the SCOTUS even passed up a circuit court split case, which is, per their own guidelines, an urgent reason to take a case. I know. That's exactly what they did. And it is, and that coupled with the fact that 4 of them have said in the past, hey, we need to take a Second Amendment case, I think maybe there was some pre-trial discussion with Roberts, who has pretty much said, yeah, no, not now. I'll vote against it. That of course you'll never know for sure, but I think that may be what happened. Somewhere Roberts said that he would he'd scuttle and sink any Pro 2A case that came up. Philo says, I really like my pistol braces. Yep, me too, and I ain't ever turning in shit. That's how it goes. But that's another show. I guess I should have said that a couple days ago when we were talking about this, right? Let's see. What do I have next in my...
If it goes from rumor to actual fact, you can do another show, right?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, if it goes from rumor to actual fact, if I get any more information, you can bet your sweet bippy I'll be doing another show. There is some good news. Normally I save good news for near the last, but I figured I'd kind of break up all the...
Is there any good news?
All the garbage with something good to tell us. This is a piece from NRA ILA from June 15th, 2020. Victory in New Mexico. The NRA won. The rights of law-abiding New Mexicans to purchase a firearm and go to the range have been vindicated. In April, the NRA, along with the New Mexico Shooting Sports Association, Second Amendment Foundation, Firearms Policy Coalition, and Mountain States Legal Foundation filed suit in federal court against Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham for shuttering retail firearms businesses and ranges due to COVID-19. As a direct result of our lawsuit, the governor changed course. Now, retail firearms businesses and ranges can operate like all other businesses in New Mexico. NRA members and law-abiding gun owners earned a victory today, said NRA ILA Director of Litigation Counsel Michael Jean, who represented the NRA in this case. Gun shops and ranges are now open, and our members in New Mexico can freely exercise their rights. The lawsuit was voluntarily dismissed, leaving open the possibility to bring a new suit if the governor decides to change course and infringe on law-abiding New Mexicans' rights under the guise of COVID-19 again. We hope that doesn't happen, but we'll be ready to go at it again if it does, Gene said. So, outstanding. Notice that the NRA tried to take a whole shitload of credit there. I'm really surprised that they even mentioned the other organizations in there, but hey, good on them for doing it. And good on them for being a part of actually fighting for our rights instead of figuring out how to pay for Wayne's intern love shack.
Well, the NRA has a really big presence in New Mexico, right?
No, I didn't. I'm not really familiar with New Mexico much.
The NRA Whittington Center. But then again, you could say, well, they got a big presence in Virginia and they were late to the show. Okay, yeah.
Did they even go to the show in Virginia?
They took credit like a week later,
Oh, okay.
Squib, not only do they have a big presence in Virginia, their headquarters is in Virginia, yet they couldn't stop what happened.
Yeah, well, no, they didn't stop what happened is what they were kind of, and maybe they learned a lesson from that, and they said, well, we got a big presence in New Mexico too. Maybe we should say, not that there's more than 2 people in the state to notice because it's so sparsely populated, but yeah, they've got a very big operation up there.
DTemp points something out in the comments that is an interesting coincidence. I'd have to look at it to make sure that's accurate, but for now I will trust that it's the case, that he knows what he's talking about. He says Roberts has voted with the left ever since the Obamacare case. Joshua Prince says, yeah, exactly. I'd say the blackmail against John Roberts started not long before signing off on Obamacare. That's interesting if true. Our next piece, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, maybe you've been living under a rock or in a cage, or you just woke from a coma, or you have just stumbled out of the woods after being lost for most of a year. But right now, it's kind of hard being a cop in this country. As a matter of fact, right now, you couldn't pay me enough to be a cop. I'm just waiting for all this crap to bleed over onto corrections, and then, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll go drive a handicap van for somebody or something. I don't know. Anyhow,
you say that, but I was actually thinking that today is that it might bleed over into your field.
Oh, believe me, I've been thinking about it. I'm not looking forward to it. But this piece from Mom at Arms, which is a pretty freaking cool blog. You guys should go check it out, momatarms.com. By William Shanahan, 4 days ago. Chicago police no longer responding to active shootings? You be the judge. Radio traffic of shootout underway, and the CPD says, let them do it. Chicago, this is from Femme Fatale. A tweet says, Chicago's getting what they wanted, no police. Let them do it. Let it be. You're on your own. Let's see what this says. Media could not be played. Oh, come on. Well, I guess we're just going to have to read all about it. Let me see if I can go right to it and see if that works. There we go.
Let him do it. Call it. Let it be. The survey kids falling, they're shooting, there's gangbangers versus gangbangers, they're shooting across at each other. Let him do it. Call it. Let it be. Middle.
Got what you wanted.
Cermak and Spalding, the gang members are
cops.
shooting at each other.
Let them do it. Let it be. Wow. So this comes after Mayor Lightfoot ignored pleas for help from an alderman who also told citizens to not take matters into their own hands, call the police in regards to rioting and looting / defending property. I'm sorry, Chicago. This is from the Sharp Edge. I'm sorry, Chicago. You're screwed. This is your mayor. Sound on. Must listen leaked audio. Language warning.
We can't expect our police, and I don't fault them at all, to be able to control this. But I know that we asked our faith base yesterday to stand at the front line between police and looters and rioters. And I am simply not comfortable telling my churches, those people, to be the intermediary.
By the way, if you have tender ears, you may wish to go elsewhere for a couple minutes because this exchange gets a little bit heated.
In the middle of a riot that's citywide. We need something better because right now we only have 370 whatever National Guards on standby. Half our neighborhoods are already obliterated. It's too late. We have to come up with a better plan because my fear is once they're done looting and rioting and whatever's going to happen tonight, God help us, what happens when they start going after residents, going into the neighborhoods? Once they start trying to break down people's doors so they think they got something, or, we know that people are here to antagonize and incite, and you've got them all pumped today, they're not going to go to bed at 8 o'clock. They're going to turn their focus in the neighborhoods. I've got gangbangers with AK-47s walking around right now, just waiting to settle some scores. What are we going to do, and what do we tell our residents other than good faith people stand up? It's not going to be enough.
So listen to how she responds to this here in a second. It's kind of like, wow.
Thank you, Alderman. Next question.
Thank you, Alderman. Next question. And now's when it starts to get interesting.
Well, no, I want an answer. You commented on everybody. I want an answer. It's not something you ignore. This is a question that I have.
I think you're 100% full of shit is what
I think you're 100% full of shit is what I think, is what she says to him.
I think. If you think we
no offense, fuck you then.
Oh, I gotta back that one up because it's hilarious.
Is what I think. If you think
no offense, fuck you then. Who are you to tell me I'm full of shit?
And if you think we were not ready and we stood by and let the neighborhood go up, there's nothing intelligent that I can say to you.
Well, maybe you should come out and see what's going on.
The stupidest thing I have ever heard. I understand you want to preen. I understand that you think that you...
Mayor, you need to check your fucking attitude. That's what you need to do.
Every single person...
Right now, no. You need to check your attitude.
That was great. Well, I think you're full of shit. That's what I think. Well, no offense, but fuck you. So, citizens of Chicago, you're really on your own. I don't even blame the CPD. I blame the city's inept leadership. Does it surprise you that Lightfoot is backed by Moms Demand Action every town, which is rather odd if you see their history on discrimination? Apparently, Trace Media, every town's media arm, thought Lightfoot would be different from what she is. Epic fail. So, there you go, folks. Chicago PD says, nah, let him be. And if someone's complaining to the mayor, well, they're just full of shit. Please, let's open this to discussion. What do you guys think of that?
Well, now in Chicago, people, okay, it's gone back and forth. Can they have guns or not legally, lawfully?
Maybe.
Yeah, see, it's like DC. It goes back and forth, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If the law-abiding citizens who work their regular job and just go about their business, but they live in these neighborhoods, just want to protect themselves, and they don't have the ability to, and they can't count on the cops, what are they supposed to do? Now, for the rest of them, The rest of them who've been supporting these thugs, hiding these thugs, encouraging these thugs, the rest of them that are these thugs, yeah, I could see them going into their own neighborhoods and robbing their neighbors and their relatives and everybody else, because that's what they are. They're thugs. So for the people who are caught, the few people that are caught in the middle, it's unfortunate, and I don't know what to say about that. But for the people who helped create this, you got what you deserve. Now, I understand when they have the rioters that come from out of town to come riot, because that happens, right? But when they're coming from the neighborhood and they say, yeah, we're running out of commercial buildings to burn, let's go back into our own neighborhood and burn it. What do you expect? This is the problem the police run into every night, right? Because you don't snitch, or well, why did they have to shoot him? He was just robbing that guy because he needed money to feed his kids. It's like, then why didn't he get a job? And some of the hypocrisy with the attitudes of some of the people that live in these neighborhoods. I was talking with somebody about, what if they came up into my suburbanite neighborhood? Well, not everybody here has guns, but lots of people do. We don't even need the police to protect our suburb. Well, down there, they don't have guns to protect themselves. So I don't know what they're going to do.
In reality here, that alderman that she was talking to, he's very critical of Lightfoot. Very critical. I mean, sometime before all this stuff started to happen, he was really critical of the way she was handling stuff with the school systems and whatnot. And he's grandstanded quite a few times about, well, Lightfoot sucks and yada yada. But the thing that gets me is that dude, they showed pictures of that dude's neighborhood and it's thrashed. And for her to say that, he's full of shit, that just tells you the mindset in Chicago. I mean, I had this argument with some people today on the internet. It's like that Illinois is so jacked at this point. I don't even want to travel through the state. I don't want to spend my money there. And it sucks when some of those people come over and they thrash my city while polluting the beaches. But yet, they have a whole lot of room to talk when they sit there and they crack on Indiana. And that lady, she's a crackpot, man. She's a crackpot. And those people, hey man, if the city burns, the city burns. I mean, what's even sadder is she let them do this in these people's districts, but raised all 3 bridges, so they didn't make it onto the Mag Mile. So what does that tell you? So what, you're gonna let all those
did that? Oh wow!
Yeah, and it's like, so you're gonna do that? You're gonna save Macy's and all these other businesses, but all these local businesses, whether they be owned by black folk or not, you're going to let these businesses burn in other people's neighborhood? You're a jerk. She's a jerk. And, they elected her. And like everybody else says, this is what you got to put up with. And you better not fall into that trap, because she came out of left field to win that position. And, when you vote these kind of people in, do you expect different results? How many times have we watched Illinois elect some kind of representative, some kind of politician, and they're either arrested, charged with child molestation, or they just get charged with stealing funds? The whole state is corrupt.
I know. I was thinking that she looks like an evil old witch, but maybe she actually is. Maybe she gets it honest, right?
Unfortunately, so many of these people just get reelected and reelected and reelected. People don't go, you know what? You're right. I remember when they kind of just, let us burn down, or, wreck the economy, or did this or did that. It's just, it's really frustrating. There's just so many people that they just don't think.
Well, I'm on this one. because there's some video that we have to deconstruct. So, yeah. This is from Concealed Nation, and we're going to talk about the protester that got shot in Albuquerque. This is by Brandon Curtis from 6/16/20. Breaking. Person shot as group attempts tearing down statue in New Mexico. Armed militia was there protecting statues. Protests are still going on, and they're taking new form as we've seen a recent call to remove statues that are associated with the Confederacy and other controversial topics. Today in Albuquerque, a group of demonstrators were attempting to take down a statue of Juan de Oñate, who was a Spanish conquistador. A man was shot Monday evening at a demonstration where protesters planned to topple a conquistador statue in Albuquerque, New Mexico, authorities said. It wasn't immediately clear who had been shot. Albuquerque police said in a statement that one person had been taken to a hospital in critical condition, but that there were no other injuries. Multiple gunshots can be heard in the background of the video below after a man in a blue shirt is seen running from protesters. The shots are heard in the last minute of the video. It's still unknown who fired the shots. Well, they figured out who fired the shooting. Who fired the shooting? Who did the shooting? It was a man named, Stephen Baca? He, at one point at least, had been running for office in Albuquerque. And, well, next up, we are going to, let me swap back to this swap back to the main view while I set this up. We're going to look at some video. I gathered a bunch of video from around the internet that shows this, and I edited it together to show a chronological sequence of the events that took place that day, at least as complete as I could find. I'm sure there's other video out there that I didn't see and didn't put in this, but this is what I had, so this is what I cobbled together as soon as I can find it. And then it comes up and all that other good garbage, right? Warning. Stop. Let's go full screen. Thank you very much. Oh, wait, no, let's not go full screen. So I have to have that up. Now, let's go full screen. The following video contains images that some viewers may find disturbing. I combined several videos of the shooting at a protest in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I did not shoot the videos shown, nor do I claim ownership. I merely edited them together in one place in chronological order. Viewer discretion is advised. All right, now this right here in the blue shirt is Stephen Baca, and you just saw him shove one woman. Here he is to the right of the screen, and he rips a sign out of that woman's hand and throws her down. Now you're going to see Mr. Baca. He's somewhere in this area. And I also throw a video in on this side too. But here he is, trying to get past a woman in a camouflage shirt. She ain't letting him pass. He's getting pissed, and he slams her to the ground. Now at this point, Mr. Baca is not a victim here. And at this point, regardless of whether you agree with the protest or not, regardless of whether you agree with taking down the statues or not, I don't think he's a victim. But I'll just shut up here and we'll play the rest of the video, and then I'll get you guys' opinion, and then I'll give you the rest of mine. There's one smacky smack. Pepper spraying people. He's trying to leave.
Go home!
Oh, fuck! Get his fucking license plate! He just fucking shot him!
All right. So, my panel. What do you guys think? Is this a good shoot? Is this a bad shoot? Is this something else?
Don't they tell us not to pursue somebody getting away? The cops can, but we can't, right? That whole thing about, if you shoot them running out of your house in the front yard, drag them back in the house and it's okay, which is a myth.
Yeah.
Isn't this the same sort of thing? These people were chasing him. He was outnumbered. He feared for his life. Despite what he did, he was trying to get out of the situation and de-escalate it, and they weren't having any of it. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. As often as I'm going to call a bad shoot, this one, I'm leaning more towards a good one. It's not like that idiot in Florida who thought he was the parking lot police. You know what I mean?
All right.
Calaveras, what do you think?
I'd say questionable. Because he certainly, got the crowd, helped to get the crowd riled up, and although when he did attempt to retreat after, being, hit with a skateboard, that's where that one's questionable to me. That's where the first half he was definitely at fault. In the second half, if you can remove the first half from it, I would say it would be okay, but in a whole, I'd say it's questionable at best.
Roll call, what do you think?
Well, first of all, thank you for showing that footage all over the internet. I explained it in my show the other night. I went on Instagram and explained it. That dude threw 2 people down to the ground. That's assault. Anywhere you call it, that's assault. He should have been arrested on site. When he retreated, those people were stupid for tracking him down. He had no other choice at the point where they brought him down to the ground. But what you don't know about Mr. Baca, and when all you guys say it's a great shoot, it's the best thing since sliced bread, he doesn't have a conceal and carry permit. Did you guys know that? He doesn't have one. So he was unlawful carrying his firearm in public, and he's now been charged with that. So when all you guys sit here and say and put these guys on a pedestal, understand it is going to come back and bite you in the butt until all the information comes out. And I've been ridiculed for this on the internet, on every single platform, during the show, after the show, in text messages, and I'm telling you right now, that's what you get. What you saw is what you get. I can't find that information. I couldn't find that video where he threw the women down, but I knew he did it. I didn't know he was a non-concealed carry holder. I don't agree with permits. I think permits are stupid. But if that's what your state requires, well, until that's gone, you're going to have to abide by that law. He didn't abide by it. So right there, he's already committing a crime. He's already committing a crime carrying a concealed weapon without a permit in that state. So when everybody sits here and they tug along and they're like, oh man, he had no choice. Yeah, he had a choice. He had a choice to stay his butt home. That's why you don't go to those things. And I said it last night. I said it in my show on Wednesday. Guess what? We can always put a new statue there of something else, but you can never remold a life. And he had
chose that particular moment to ruin his life. And for everybody that sat there and condemned me, now look who's getting kicked in the butt. So don't sit here and tell me this is a great shoot, this is good. That guy was committing a crime before a crime ever was committed. By walking out of that house without the proper forms. I don't agree with permits.
I think permits are stupid. I think everybody should have constitutional carry. But that's not how it goes in life. I have no faith in courts. I have no faith in presidents. I have no faith in lawmakers, whoever they may be. So when people sit here and chastise me and they continue to poke and prod me and say that I'm wrong, like in this little thing on Facebook that I was in, that's a great shoot. He did his job. Blah, blah, blah. Did he really do his job? Do you really think he did his job? I'm not here really to do research for other people. I'll do research for myself and then make the determination. And at that point, I said he had no choice. There was nothing he could do. It's either get plugged with a knife or beaten with a skateboard. He chose the latter. But then it comes out this guy can't even, he doesn't even have a permit to carry a gun. So he's breaking the law on that aspect. So, I mean, 2 wrongs don't make a right, and 3 wrongs don't make a right. And this guy deserves
3 rights make a left, though.
Yeah, they do. And he's going to learn that when he has to go get his food from prison. And I hope he goes to jail. If I have to have a permit and go by the same laws as my state, this guy should have to do it. You know, it's not fair for all of us to have to, you know, bend at the knee. I don't think we should have permits. Do I think that guy should be able to carry a gun without a permit? Yes. But until that's all null and void, until we get something like constitutional carry, like in Oklahoma and all these other great states, there's nothing you can do. You better abide by these rules or you're going to go to jail. And again, I'll reiterate it. He started it. It could have been finished when he ran away. But the other people on the other side, they're criminals in their right mind because they sat there and started committing a crime by wrecking public property. Again, 2 rights don't make a wrong. That guy's a schmuck. He deserves everything he gets. That guy that got plugged, he deserves everything he gets. But yet, you don't follow laws, and you're going to be a dumbass. You're going to expect dumbass results, and you're going to expect to go to jail. And that's the way it goes. Until anything else changes, it's got to be that way. Get out there and change it. If the people in New Mexico want their laws changed, go out there and change it. But I'll tell you one thing. Do not be putting these people on a pedestal. None of them. Every time they do this, and I watched everybody, Mr. Guns and Gear, all of these people, put this guy on a pedestal. Well, guess what? You got burned. You got burned because this guy was a complete moron in his actions. And for all you people out there that were criticizing me, all those people that were putting that stuff in the comments, and all those other people that were running their mouth on social media, touche, punks, touche. I'm so tired of getting ridiculed because I wait to make my statement because I want to know all the facts. Well, now you're going to know all the facts because this guy ain't getting out of jail. Bada bing, bada boom.
Well, I'll tell you guys what I think. We'll go through this. Yeah, we'll go through this. One more time. This time with special budget commentary.
The question wasn't, do you think this guy has a concealed carry permit or not? Or the question wasn't, do you think this guy is lawfully carrying a firearm? The question wasn't, do you think this guy, should have stayed home that day? That wasn't the question before the video.
Well, Squib, the question is, the real question is, when you go out looking for trouble, guess what you're going to find? You're going to find that trouble. And he found it, so he has to lie in it. You ain't got no more choice, Squib, at that point. At that point, he's rolling on the ground with those 2 dudes. You ain't got no point. You got to take the ladder.
No, I agree with you that he should have stayed home. I agree with you that he was looking for trouble and he got it. And I agree with you that a lot of people there were breaking the law. Well, everybody were there in one way or another was breaking the law. But before I saw this video, which was just now tonight, the question Budget asked wasn't about that. So if there were people out there who jumped to conclusions, as long as they're willing to retract their conclusion when they got more facts, I think that shows more than sticking to your guns when you know you're wrong. So if the question had been presented, and I understand, we don't have all the facts. It's just like the cops that roll up on the scene and they point guns at everybody, including the good guys, because they don't know. It's how they react afterward. Okay, after you figured out he's the scumbag and I'm not, could you take these damn cuffs off me? You know what I mean? But they don't, right? So how many people retracted their statement once they found out what really happened?
None of them.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and go through this. Yeah, blah, 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 disclaimer. Several videos of the shooting at a protest at Albuquerque was shown, nor do I claim ownership. I merely edited them together in one place in chronological order. Viewer discretion is advised. So again, here we see Mr. Braca shoot this woman, not shoot this one, Jesus, throw her down. Then he grabs this lady's sign and pushes her down as well, puts his hands on her. Seems like he has a thing with putting his hands on women. Then this third woman is blocking his way, keeping him from getting close. And he gets frustrated and he just slams her ass. Whoa! Now, at this point, he's committed assault 3 times. As I said, like the protest or not, like what they're doing or not, you ain't the cops, buddy. You have no right to stop this. You have no right to put your hands on these people because they did not put their hands on you first. So that's 3 counts of assault right there that I see. 3 separate incidents. And the concept of separate incidents here is important. So with this last incident starting with him throwing her to the ground, the crowd jumps in to drive off the threat. Now, I don't know whether a green skateboard guy was justified in whacking him with the skateboard on this instance. That's borderline to me, but he did it, which causes Mr. Blue Shirt to take a page out of, Monty Python and run away. Don't blame him. There's a mob of people pissed off at you. You just threw 3 women to the ground. Dude whacked you with a skateboard. Run off. And you got crazy chick in the white chasing after you, swinging her purse. He whips out the pepper spray and starts spraying her. Is he justified in that? I don't know. I know that he's trying to leave the confrontation at this point, and he is using less than lethal force to try to do so. Now, he initiated this shit right here, so maybe this would be another case of assault. Maybe not because she was chasing him. I don't know. But he has shown at this point that he's not interested in continuing this confrontation. He's not interested in being aggressive. He's not interested in being any part of this. He is trying to leave. That's key here. And remember, this is a separate incident. Because now, the incident that started, since he has left the area, he's left contact with everybody, he's making it known that he doesn't want anything to do with this, that incident's over, technically speaking. He stopped. He's leaving. He is attempting to go. And he does so. walking down the street, trying to get out of there. The crowd's telling him to leave, but they're following him. As a matter of fact, you'll hear somebody in here saying, "Follow him." And then Captain Green Backpack in skateboard runs up and attacks him. This starts a fourth incident. There was one with the shoving the first lady, one grabbing the sign and throwing it and shoving the second lady, a third one where he grabbed the lady in camouflage and threw her down. That broke off. Incident over because he left. He disengaged. He's leaving the area. They are following him. This is incident number 4. Where he gets caught and thrown to the ground. He has multiple people on him. Some have said that there's a knife involved in this incident. I've seen a picture, but I question the validity of that picture. I can't find a frame of film that shows it. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that I can't find it. So it may or may not be photoshopped. I don't know. But there's all this tussling and fighting going on. And you know what? Let me move my damn face in this. Yay! Let me move my face up out of here. And we'll go back just a little bit. So here comes Captain Skateboard. Plus the crazy lady. She came up there too. The crazy lady in white. She's beating on him, kicking him, and he starts popping. You'll notice that Captain Skateboard dropped his skateboard when he tackled him, and the black backpack guy, Captain Skateboard's green backpack, black backpack guy is the one that actually picked up the skateboard that was dropped and started clubbing him with it. There's someone going, "I'm gonna fucking kill you." And the black backpack swings at him with the skateboard, which, if you've never seen a skateboard, never held a skateboard, go to next time you're at Walmart or something, pick one up. Look at the trucks, the part that has the axle and the wheels on it. Those things are made out of metal, and they're shaped perfectly to cause a depressed skull fracture and kill your ass.
Okay. Budget, can I jump in here on this right here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. He's down. He gets back up. He draws the gun.
Mm-hmm.
They back up. Watching this the second time, they back up. At that point, he has the choice to de-escalate by saying, "Get the fuck off of me or I will plug your ass." If they don't have a gun and they can't fight back, unless they can swarm him and outnumber him, they're probably going to run it. Most people are terrified of guns. At that point, you could say, "Oh no, he had to shoot. He only had a 1/10 of a second." No, he didn't. They all backed up. Watching this the second time, they all backed up. Now, we can nitpick the hole that he's carrying illegally, but that's a separate issue.
I don't know, Squib. As soon as he drew, he fired. He wasn't waiting. He wasn't waiting to see if they were going to back up. He drew and started plugging.
No, they backed. Well, look at it again. When he pulled that thing out, they all backed up.
Oh, fuck!
But he did one thing right, quote unquote, except that A, he should have never been carrying his gun anyway because he was going to a protest like this, knowing that there's a high chance of shit like this happening. Number 2, he wasn't legally permitted to carry it. But he did one thing right, is when the threat stopped, he stopped shooting. I think that was the only thing he did right in this. My take on this overall is that he's guilty of 3 counts of assault. After that, he broke it off and tried to leave. They pursued him. They initiated. They became the aggressor. They used deadly force first. He responded with deadly force. The shoot itself, if you take it separate from everything else, I think it's probably the best response he could have given under the circumstances. On the other hand, this is definitely a case of play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Yep.
This isn't... This whole thing could have been avoided. I think that he's a jackass with a temper problem. I think that he made some poor decisions that led up to this. I don't think he's guilty of murder. I think the shooting itself was self-defense, but he also committed some crimes in there and should face the music for him. Let me go out in the chat, because I haven't been paying any attention to the chat since we started doing this. Let me go out to the chat and see what folks are saying out there. Let's see. Guy that comments he might be guilty of carrying a firearm without a license and fighting with protesters, assault, but he fled at one point and got mobbed, though arguable premeditation. M. Gabriel says, thanks for putting this video together. Guy says, lead is the law of the land. Just kidding. Was he going to drag and push away everyone from the statue? Democracy works. Arguably, he's defending the statue, but you don't defend. You're never justified in using deadly force to defend property. Property can always be replaced. Ball Gang says the Virgin Antifa protester versus the Chad gun owner. They deserved every last thing they got. He didn't initiate the problem with the purse. Let's see. What is this? Joshua Prince. Never mind what happened here. Have y'all heard about the 700 bikers and others that showed up in Portland to confront protesters? No, I have not heard about that. Yes, and Gabriel, my inset was covering the inset. I hope I got that at the last minute and you guys were able to do it. Guy that comments asks, who said kill you? Was it the blue short or part of the mob? It was part of the mob. Said, I can't tell. It's either I'm going to kill you or he's going to kill you. I'm not sure exactly which it is. And in one video, it sounds like one. In another video, it sounds like the other. Let's see. Glimtech says that was BS. He was more than justified. Don't know what video you're looking at. I showed you the video I'm looking at. Calaveras asked, did you see the beginning? And David Campbell says, let them tear down all the monuments. I don't care. Let's see. Ozzy says he could see a case for involuntary manslaughter. Squib rightly points out that if you brandish and they back off, you should not fire your weapon. Let's see. Mob shouldn't have chased him. Ball Gang says, if you had all these angry kids burrowing down on you, calling for your death, are you going to say you're not justified in shooting the mob? So this whole scenario causes a lot of differing opinions. It's complicated. This is not a simple cut and dry thing. And anybody that thinks it is simple and cut and dry is definitely fooling themselves. Because this guy did get arrested. He did get arrested. I know that they were preparing to charge him with murder. I think they
I
were
don't really
preparing to
care
charge
what
it
they
with murder.
charge this guy with. I hope they charge everybody there with at least something, because a lot of people did a lot of things that they shouldn't have been doing. I don't know if they've got enough wagons and vans to haul everybody to jail in, and and they got to exercise social distancing when they get there. They're going to have little X's in the parking lot out front of the jail, and everybody lined up waiting to get processed. But the thing is, that's part of the reason I prefer open carry over concealed for me, for my life. You see that gun, you're leaving me alone. Now, if he had walked into that crowd open carrying, people might have parted like the damn Red Sea without him even having to unholster the thing. If none of them had a gun,
maybe
if he decided to walk away and he had a big pistol on his hip, they might not have followed him. Maybe. So I believe that's one of the things in my state. Brandishing is such a gray area, and I just don't like that about our concealed carry laws, because I think that if you brandish and it de-escalates, you've done a really good thing, because you stop the fight without having to risk anybody dying. And in this case, watching it a second time, he would have been better off brandishing it, because they all backed up. Before he shot the first one, they all backed up.
Well, the story continues. This is from BlueLivesMatter.blue from the Police Tribune by Holly Matkin 3 days ago. Man arrested after shooting protester, hitting him in head with skateboard. Albuquerque, New Mexico. A former Albuquerque city council candidate who was assaulted by an angry mob of rioters and beaten with a skateboard was arrested on Monday night after he shot one of his attackers. The incident began outside the National History Museum at approximately 7:15 p.m. as rioters squared off with a group of armed counter-protesters at the site of a monument representing Spanish conquistador Juan de Oñate, according to court documents. The counter-protesters, who identified themselves as the New Mexico Civil Guard's Bernalillo Company, said they were trying to protect the monument from the rioters who sought to tear it down, the Washington Post reported. Former Albuquerque City Council candidate Stephen Baca, 31, also showed up at the scene to protect the statue from the protesters, according to court documents. Although the objectives seem to be the same, John Burks, captain of the Bernalillo Company, said that Baca is not affiliated with his group, the Washington Post reported. Cell phone footage showed the riotous mob as they swarmed the monument and attempted to rip it from its pedestal. But while they were doing so, chaos erupted in the crowd. The second video showed Baca as he tried to hold rioters away from the statue. At one point, Baca took a woman to the ground, the video showed. A moment later, well, that's one way to say it. I think he slammed her ass to the ground. A moment later, Baca was standing at the edge of the fray when a masked suspect bashed him with a green longboard. Baca immediately ran away from the crowd, but the rioters chased after him, the video showed. He continued to back away from them, utilizing pepper spray to douse the oncoming crowd, according to court documents. Stephen continued to retreat away from the crowd while walking quickly backward and holding up his hand with his palm toward the crowd as if to separate himself from it. Despite his clear retreat, the mob maliciously pursued him and yanked him to the ground, police said. Several members of the group began punching and kicking him while he was down on the pavement. Baca attempted to protect his body and head with his hands, the video showed. The longboard-wielding attacker, later identified as 39-year-old Scott Williams, then slammed the board into Baca's head yet again. Actually, it was a different guy. Baca responded by firing a black semi-automatic handgun at him several times, according to court documents. Williams suffered multiple gunshot wounds to his torso. Meanwhile, Baca placed his gun on the ground and moved away from it, police said. He was quickly taken into custody by Albuquerque Police Department tactical units and transported to Presbyterian Hospital, where he was medically cleared, according to court documents. He refused to speak with investigators and was subsequently charged with aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, plus firearm enhancement. Williams was rushed to the hospital, where he remains in stable condition, the Washington Post reported. Laura Shower Ives, an attorney for Williams' family, said that Williams has devoted his life to seeking equality and justice, the Albuquerque Journal reported. Read, he's a professional Antifa agitator. When Stephen Baca repeatedly attacked peaceful protesters in Albuquerque last night, which he did, until the last fourth incident. We already talked about that. Scott took bullets for the community he cares about, the family wrote in a statement. Scott took bullets because he was bashing the dude in the head with a skateboard. I've said that the Williams family is very certain that had Scott not taken the bullets for Mr. Baca, that the community, somebody in the community he cared about, would have been harmed, according to the Washington Post. I'm also fairly certain that had he not pursued Mr. Baca and grabbed the skateboard that another attacker had dropped and smacked Mr. Baca in the head with it, that he wouldn't have taken those bullets. The family said that the APD should have done more to stop the situation from escalating to the point of violence. Now that I can agree with. The Albuquerque Police Department hid behind the Albuquerque Museum, refused to respond to multiple requests for help, and only sent officers in once shots were fired, Williams' family declared, according to the Albuquerque Journal. APD used rubber projectiles and tear gas to disperse the riotous mob, according to the Washington Post. All members of the armed militia group were taken into custody, but they were released about 3 hours later after being questioned, Burks told the paper. Albuquerque Mayor Tim Keller blamed the situation on outside groups interfering with peaceful protests and alleged that the armed counter-protesters were trying to prop up white supremacy. Yeah, always. The Washington Post reported. Keller also assured the community that allegations that Baca violently threw a woman to the ground prior to being chased will be added to the court's record in a supplemental filing. Good, because that's what he did on 3 separate occasions with 3 separate victims. The New Mexico State Police have taken over the investigation into the incident, the Washington Post reported. A police oversight board has also launched an investigation into the tactics the APD used before and after the demonstration turned violent, which is probably why they tried to stay the hell out of it. Keller said that the city has removed the Juan de Oñate monument after doing so became an urgent matter of public safety. Baca, a Republican, won less than 6% of the vote during his run for Albuquerque City Council in 2019, according to the Washington Post. He said he was compelled to run for office because he believes police are complete wimps when it comes to fighting crime, and that he is worried his community is becoming a third world country, the Washington Post reported. And then, it says, watch the incident unfold, graphic content, obscene language, etc. So we've already watched that, and yes, it did have graphic content and obscene language. But the story's not over. There is still more to it. Because, and this is why I've waited until Friday to say anything, this story has developed and developed and developed. I am not going to just jump on the bandwagon to get my opinion out there on something like this without knowing all the facts. Or at least as many of them as I can gather. I can't say that I know all the facts because I don't. In this piece from Reuters, from June 17th, shooting charge dropped against suspected New Mexico shooter. A New Mexico prosecutor on Wednesday dropped a shooting charge against an Albuquerque man suspected of shooting a protester and called for further investigations after allegations the protester was armed at the time he was shot. Bernalillo County District Attorney Raul Torres said he had serious concerns. An initial police investigation into the Monday shooting did not identify who owned multiple weapons collected at the scene, including knives, nor interview key bystanders and police. Torres dropped an initial aggravated battery with a deadly weapon charge against Stephen Baca, 31, after images emerged online showing protester Scott Williams, 39, holding what was rumored to be a knife before he was allegedly shot by Baca. Torres said he expected Baca to claim self-defense in the case. There have been rumors on social media about what transpired in the final seconds before this, and we are actively looking into these and whether or not this was justified, Torres told an online press briefing. The reason he is not facing that charge right now is because this investigation is not complete. Videos show Baca, a counter-protester at a demonstration to remove a conquistador statue, tussling with demonstrators before pulling out a handgun and shooting several times. Torres said that under New Mexico law, a person cannot claim self-defense if they are the first aggressor. Torres said that his office had put out a call for information on allegations Williams was armed. Right now, I have no evidence to suggest that he was in any way armed, Torres said. Well, except for the skateboard that he was smacking Baca with. The fact that we haven't charged it, shooting charge, today doesn't mean it will not be charged. Torres filed 4 new charges against Baca for unlawful carrying of a firearm and battery for allegedly assaulting 3 women before the shooting. So there's your 3 counts of battery, plus 1 for not having the concealed carry permit. Baca's lawyer, Jason Bowles, said he would plead not guilty to all charges, the Albuquerque Journal reported. Bowles did not immediately respond to a request for further comment. So let's go back to this. Torres said that under New Mexico law, a person cannot claim self-defense if they are the first aggressor. That's why this whole thing being broken up into 4 separate incidences is extremely important for Baca. Because in the first 3 incidents, which get him 3 charges, he committed assault, which in Ohio would be assault. In New Mexico, it's battery. He committed those crimes. I think there's no doubt about it. He can and probably should be convicted of them. But it's the 4th, the shooting, that's not so clear cut. He was trying to de-escalate by leaving. He attempted to leave. He was chased, thrown to the ground, surrounded, and attacked by multiple people, one of them having what could be a deadly weapon. I'm telling you, feel the trucks on a skateboard and you'll know what I'm talking about. It can cave your skull in. You know, that shoot in and of itself may be justified, quote unquote, if you take it as a separate incident away from the others. Now, he deserves to go to jail for the battery, the 3 counts of battery. I absolutely believe that, and I think he should. You know, he broke the law, even though it is an unjust law when it comes to carrying the firearm without a permit. He will probably go to jail for that. But murder or manslaughter? I don't think so. What do you guys think? Am I absolutely nuts on this?
That's interesting with, 4 separate incidences. In that situation, I guess, you know more about the law than I do. To me, it would seem like they'd be all connected because, it was, one immediately, cause and effect to the next. So, but that's where you're saying that.
I'm looking for something.
You're saying that all 4 are, by at least in legal standards, are considered different?
Yeah. As far as I know, it is different. I should have freaking. By the way, if you guys don't have this book in your library, you probably oughta. The Law of Self-Defense by Andrew Branca. Highly recommend it. Let me see if I can find what I'm talking about.
Well, while you do that, let me ask Calaveras this. Do you think that if somebody assaults you and then they run away, that you have the right to chase them down and beat the living snot out of them and it's okay?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But that's where, I'm just was more trying to wrap my head around and confirm what Budget was saying with, how legally how it, goes together. That's where I'm learning here, so.
Okay. I think you should be able to, but I understand why they don't want you to, because they want it de-escalated. They don't want to break it into 2 separate incidents, et cetera, et cetera. My thing is that I've always been taught that in a situation like this, you're okay to follow them at a distance and report their whereabouts to law enforcement, but you are not to engage them as if you were law enforcement, because you are not. So if these guys thought that they could get retribution, or they could subdue him, or they could keep him from fleeing any further, and they thought that they had to use this lethal force against him, or what could be perceived as lethal force against him, they were taking the law into their own hands. What I see is everybody in that video was breaking a minimum of 1 law, a minimum. But the whole thing is, as much as it would be nice to be able to chase somebody down that hit you and beat the snot out of them, go, don't ever hit me again, it's against the law right now. So, and these guys weren't even the ones that got hit. They were being social justice warriors and going after this guy. And, I don't know. It goes against the stuff they teach you in your concealed carry class.
Right. Yeah, that's right. At one point in the video, you hear someone yell, "Get his license plate number." That, I think, would be a completely, completely legit. Like, okay, he did assault these 2 ladies. If you can spot what vehicle he's driving, get the plate number, then you can report it. And then say, hey, this was the vehicle that they drove away in. Let the cops do their thing.
Yeah.
I think that would be, perfectly I guess in some ways you could call that retribution, kind of a legal retribution. But yeah, that's where running, tackling him after, to try to hold him. Not a good idea.
Because he got himself out of the situation for whatever reason. He realized he's in over his head or had second thoughts or he's just a chicken shit. If he had thrown her to the ground and the guy standing next to her jumped this guy and held him down and said, somebody call 911 and restrained him, I could see that being justified. But once he tries to leave the area, I think you lose all justification for trying to restrain them, to hold them until the police get there. And at that point,
and that's exactly what I'm about to talk about.
Well, we run into the situation like in Georgia, where it's like, how much force can you use to hold somebody when you're doing a citizen's arrest, right? And it's different state to state.
Again, Law of Self-Defense, 3rd edition, page 49. For those of you who have the book or who might decide to buy the book, I'll throw a link to it out in the chat here in a little bit. He's talking about regaining innocence. Says, what happens if you could be made to look as if you were the aggressor? Perhaps you had to defend yourself against someone, and now the person's friends are telling the police that you started the fight. Even worse, imagine that you momentarily lost your mind and actually were the aggressor. There are times for all of us when we're not quite at our best. The daily pressures of life, work, and family may lead even the most amiable person to respond forcefully to insulting behavior. You snapped, shoved someone, and now you're in trouble. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? As the apparent or real aggressor, you've lost the ability to claim self-defense. But does that mean you've lost that ability for the duration of the conflict, no matter what you do? Whether you made the mistake of provoking conflict or are being made to look as if you did, there still may be a way to argue self-defense at trial. There is a way to regain your innocence for the purposes of self-defense law. Withdraw from the fight and communicate your withdrawal. In every state, the initial aggressor in a fight can regain their innocence by doing both of the following: withdraw from the fight and effectively communicate their withdrawal to the other person. If that other person then continues to fight even after you do these things, then they become the aggressor in a new conflict, and you may lawfully act in self-defense against their attack. Good representation of most state statutes. He quotes a Louisiana law, and he says, let's analyze what this is really saying. First, the withdrawal must be made in good faith. You must really mean to abandon the fight. This isn't a tactical withdrawal, that is, a withdrawal intended to allow you to improve your ability to fight, such as to reload or to obtain cover, then re-engage. Second, you need to communicate your withdrawal. For practical purposes, when people run away, they are constructively communicating to the other person that they are withdrawing from the fight as fast as their feet will take them. That's usually sufficient to meet the communication requirement. So let's, and I'm going to continue with this, but let's take a look at what happened in this fight so far. He committed those 3 acts of battery. Then he left. He was very clearly leaving. He very clearly disengaged from the fight, used less than lethal means to try to get someone to stop chasing him, communicated that he was leaving by turning around and walking the hell away. They chased him down, which then turned them into the aggressors. Here's the real danger to watch out for. It's not just you who can regain your innocence. So can that other guy, the one who was the aggressor in the first fight, which is what just happened. Imagine you're punched, but it turns out to be a case of mistaken identity. Your attacker thought you were somebody else. Realizing their mistake, your attacker backs off. You, being understandably angry, decide to return the attacker's favor and give them a punch of your own. Now, this is applying to the people in the crowd, specifically the dude in a black backpack and or Captain, the green backpack guy, Captain Longboard. What happened? By backing off, the original attacker has regained their innocence, and now you are the aggressor in a second fight. In that second fight, the attacker can claim self-defense, but you cannot. And that's exactly what happened here. He broke that off. He created that 4th incident. He regained his innocence because he was trying to flee from the confrontation, and he was not allowed. And in fact, then the crowd escalated this into a deadly force encounter by striking him in the head with an object. Legally speaking, that's clear-cut self-defense to me. Now, understand, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a guy that read a book. But the guy that wrote the book is a lawyer with years of self-defense law under his belt. So take it for what it's worth, folks. I think it was a case of play stupid games, win stupid prizes on all counts, everybody involved.
On the flip
But
side
it ain't
of that,
murder.
on the flip side of that budget, going back to something that Squibb had said about when he drew, if the other guys really were trying to run away, then you could say that's a fifth incident. If the shooter is the aggressor again. It's hard to say. They didn't get very far before the rounds went off.
I personally don't believe there was enough time for that to apply in between him drawing and him firing, because to me, and again, this is just my opinion from what I saw, is that he drew and fired. He didn't draw, wait a second, then fire.
And that's just it.
I agree on that. I'm just saying, depending on how the law is interpreted and applied.
Yeah, and it's going to depend on what the jurors see, because what any of us believe doesn't mean shit, really.
Sometimes you see these incidents where somebody gets shot and no, you're not there and everything's happening fast and such, et cetera. Understand that. But there are situations where you can wait a second before you pull the trigger. I don't always agree with these BS self-defense instructors that say you've got to be able to draw faster than the speed of light. You don't need a safety. And as soon as that gun is clear of your holster, just pull the trigger as fast as you can and waste everything in front of you. And you say, well, that's not what the instructors do. Well, it sure does sound like that when I hear some of the things people say on some of the shows and in some of the videos and everything else like that. I'm not saying that when somebody's right on top of you and you're fearing for your life, that you don't have the right to use lethal force.
By the way, folks, I just chucked out the link to the law of self-defense. I firmly believe that anybody who owns a gun and carries it for self-defense should probably spend the $20-some on the book, or $9, $10 for the Kindle edition if you like electronic reading. Well worth the money. Read it, know it, live it, because it might save you from dumb shit like this. Now, please, go ahead, Squibb. I apologize for interrupting you there. I just wanted to let them know the link's out there.
No, never mind. I know if I go on with it, it's not going to go anywhere, so never mind.
Jason Stewart says, what happened to the statue? Does it still stand? No, the city removed it. So, this goes to show a couple things. Number one, if you live in a place where you have to take a concealed carry class to get a permit, or if you live in a place where you don't even need that, in the first case, that class isn't enough training. And in the second case, not having any training is not a wise idea. I think that every person should be required to, but I think every person that carries a gun should, on their own, for their own sake, get some more advanced training than a basic class. And for the love of God, educate yourself on self-defense law. So that you have an idea of what you actually can and cannot do in your local jurisdiction. Again, that's why I bought that book and why I recommend it to everybody. It's why I take advanced classes beyond the basic concealed carry class. That's why I carry self-defense insurance. That $20 or whatever the hell it is I pay every month to the USCCA is money well spent in my book, because if I ever am forced to use deadly force to defend myself or someone else, then I may not be financially ruined. I might never financially recover from this because I don't want to be that guy. Highly recommend everybody get some kind of self-defense insurance. G23 asks, are you just going to skip over the fact that the guy with the skateboard and the other guy, one of them had a knife and tried to stab him? That is when he pulled the gun. No, I'm not going to skip over it because A, I've already discussed it, and B, I've discussed that I'm not sure that actually happened because C, I can't find a frame of video where it shows it. Had you been paying attention or been watching at the time, maybe you weren't, you would have discovered that already because that's ground I've already covered. So, don't come at me like that, dude. So, make sure that you...
How about if I say this?
Go ahead. Say whatever you want, Squib. That's why you're here. I want you to say whatever you want.
Somebody's got a knife. They've got a hammer. They've got a sword. They've got a bat. They've got a steel pipe. They've got whatever. They're threatening you. They're telling you they're going to beat you to death. They're going to kill you. They're swinging it at you, doing whatever. But they haven't connected, or they've connected once. You're injured, but you're not incapacitated. And you pull your gun, and they stop. Whether they freeze like a statue, whether they back up, whether they drop their gun or their implement and run, you just stopped the fight.
Correct.
If they're so close and they're swinging and stabbing and hitting and you have no choice, okay, at that point I get draw, shoot, aim. That's, if you're that close. But if you're not that close, or you've only been hit or stabbed or punched or whatever to a point where you're injured, but you're not incapacitated, you can still use that firearm. And drawing it stops the fight. Then you've already won. You've won the fight. Anything above and beyond that, you are going to risk getting charged with manslaughter, murder,
You're
you name it.
absolutely right.
You've got to have a cool head. If it's happening at light speed, and at point blank range, I get it. But look at the video. There was distance. There was opportunity for all kinds of stuff. And they backed up. It's as simple as that. It just is as simple as that. I'm not playing the devil's advocate. I'm using some common sense here. If he was so incapacitated that he could barely hold on to the gun and they were standing over top of him and he fired it, I could get him saying, I was about to lose consciousness. I had to do something, right? But it wasn't a situation like that. It just wasn't.
Well, and I think that I see the timing of that differently from what you do. And we're just going to have to agree to disagree on this particular case. Now, in general, absolutely. You're 100% correct. That's what happened it was Georgia or Florida with the guy in the parking lot.
That was Florida. But I'm just saying, though, I mean, otherwise, why didn't you shoot that guy at Circle K?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Because there was no reason to. We weren't involved in any physical altercation at all.
I'm just saying that some people would say that's a justified shoot. We got those people out there.
They're just they're morons. Thankfully, I'm not, or at least not a moron about that. Because my big fat ass would be in jail. Then I'm too pretty for that.
Yeah, but you're in jail all the time, so.
Yes, but they're paying me to be there, and I can leave.
You're in the part on the board that says just visiting.
They're paying me to be there, and I can leave. Let's see. In other news, speaking of stuff that is going on. Oh, by the way, first, let me talk about this first. Let me take a chance at some whorish commercialism. Not just for myself, but on behalf of other other firearms creators. For those of you that do not know, there is a 2020 patch batch started. Gun Channels Patch Batch 2020. Batches of patches for gun channels. Started by gear websites, but the rest of us are beneficiary of it as well. There are 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of us with a 10th patch to be determined by whomever is, I think, the first 10 people. We each grab a set of new patches from these 10 Gun Channels live shows. They keep all the extra patches, 40 or so. So everything that isn't given out to the people that back the project, we get the extra so that we can give it away, do whatever with it, which is cool. It's a way for us to get some patches at little cost to us. So it gets some of our favorite gun channels some patches. Each get a full set. They'll get whatever's left. For a random single patch, donate $15. A random set of 3 patches, $25. If you want a full set of all 10, it's for $80. So I will chuck this link out into the chat. My patch is not necessarily going to be my logo. I have something else that I want to do as a patch, and I will show you guys that here in a momentito. Let me get this link out there first, if you guys choose to help. If not, that's cool too. It's all right. But let me see if I can find that patch here in a moment. Let me turn that down. Oh, sorry guys, I just got rid of y'all. Where did I put it? No, seriously, where the hell did I put that? Is it in here? Logos, icons, and stuff? No. Well, anyhow, it's not my logo, so I'm not going to waste any more of the show time looking for it. Maybe I'll do a separate standalone video on that too. But there it is. I chucked the link out there in the chat. Unable to connect to chat. Why? What? Huh? Are you guys still there on GunTube?
Yeah.
Yep. Roll call, are you outside?
All right, the chat's out there. Just my other computer can't ain't working it because it's kind of my internet's gone really weird with the Wi-Fi. I think my my Wi-Fi router is taking a crap on me.
It wouldn't be right of the people if...
Correct. It wouldn't be right of the people if there weren't technical difficulties. It is somewhat traditional. So, yeah. All right. Now, back to the show. Thank you for putting up with my A, crass commercial whoring here, and B, technical ineptitude. Although you've come to expect the latter and should probably expect the former, right? In some good news from the ClarionLedger.com. Where the hell is it?
The who?
Clarion Ledger. Where's the story I'm looking for? Here we go. June 17th, 2020. A federal judge ruled the city of Jackson cannot overturn the state's right to open carry firearms, even amid a public health outbreak such as the coronavirus pandemic. Good Lord. Come on. I don't want all this bullshit. Answer a survey from a third-party researcher to gain access to... What the... Do you plan to make a charitable donation of any kind next? Undecided.
Okay, so like the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi said no open carry in my city because he was thinking it was going to create violence, and it got overturned. Next.
Correct. You know what, you son of a bitch? Come on. There.
It's all those pop-ups.
A federal judge ruled the city of Jackson cannot overturn the state's right pandemic. The order, issued by U.S. District Judge Daniel P. Jordan III, means city officials are prevented from issuing any ban on open carry in the state's largest city, so long as it opposes state law. It follows Jackson Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba's announcement of the controversial ban to protect the health and safety of Jackson residents. The Mississippi Justice Institute, a nonprofit legal center, filed the lawsuit on behalf of State Representative Dana Criswell, Republican, Olive Branch. Criswell is a federally licensed firearms dealer and proponent of open carry laws in the state. Attorneys for the mayor and the Jackson City Council on Friday agreed to the terms of a consent decree to never attempt to restrict open carry again. A consent decree is an agreement between two parties issued by a judge instead of continuing the case in court. So, to make a long story short, they can't ever again, they are not allowed to do it at this time, and they've agreed to never do it in the future. So that is pretty friggin' good. But there's more good news for the...
Can we just get that with every time an anti-gun law gets overturned?
That would be great, right? There's some more good news from the legal standpoint. This is a piece from AmmoLand from June 15th. Florida 1st District Court of Appeals. Concealed gun, not valid reason for stop. The 1st District Court of Appeals, State of Florida, on 29 May 2020, found merely noticing a person had a concealed handgun was not sufficient reason to stop and search them. It was not sufficient probable cause to investigate the situation further under Florida law. Here's a summation of what happened according to the 1st District Court of Appeals. Deputy Beach parked and approached the truck in order to discuss the license plate cover with the driver and give him a verbal warning about the license plate cover. According to Deputy Beach, he was just going to have a talk. It really wasn't even investigatory at that point. As Deputy Beach was approaching, the appellant got out of the truck holding a knife. When the appellant saw the deputy, he placed the knife on the front seat of the truck and raised his hands. When he raised his hands, Deputy Beach saw the butt of a handgun sticking out of the appellant's waistband. The deputy then closed the distance and put his hands on him and kind of guided him up against the vehicle and began to detain him. In other words, he slammed him up against the truck. After the appellant was handcuffed, placed in the back of the deputy's patrol car, and read the Miranda warning, the deputy asked the appellant if he had a concealed weapons license, and the appellant responded in the negative. The appellant was then arrested for carrying a concealed weapon without a license, a violation of yada yada. According to Deputy Beach, at the time of the appellant's initial seizure, other than the firearm, he had no reason to detain him at that point. The only probable cause given for the detention and search was the presence of the concealed firearm. Over 40 years ago, I had been taught, as a newly minted officer, that searching someone I suspected had a weapon was always acceptable. I was told no judge would refuse to prosecute a case where a weapon was found. The weapon itself would be proof the search was warranted. That was several decades ago. Concealed carry was illegal in Wisconsin. Permits were only available in a few states and difficult to obtain. The nation has come a long way toward restoring Second Amendment rights. First District Court of Appeal in Florida referenced the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in Commonwealth v. Hicks decision from 31st May 2019. In Hicks, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said the mere presence of a concealed weapon was not probable cause for a stop and search. There have been similar decisions in Kentucky and Washington State. Hicks is black. The court should be colorblind for equality under the law. For decades, minorities were discriminated against when it came to carrying weapons. In the infamous Dred Scott case, Chief Justice Taney wrote that black people could not be considered citizens because they would be allowed to keep and carry weapons wherever they went. Taney considered such a situation to be unthinkable. Now, it is unthinkable that a black man be refused a concealed carry permit because of their skin color in all but the 8 states where police are allowed to discriminate as a matter of law. In 1941, a judge in Florida wrote in a decision that the ban on concealed carry was never intended to be applied to the white population. The states which currently allow legal discrimination are Hawaii, California, New York, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. The CPRC, in a paper on concealed carry in 2018, indicated that Hispanics, women, and blacks were underrepresented in concealed carry permits in Los Angeles County. Discrimination is difficult to detect in Hawaii and New Jersey as the number of permits issued are so small as to be statistically insignificant. No analysis of permits by race or sex was found for New York, Maryland, Delaware, Massachusetts, or Rhode Island. And how in the hell are you saying that it's legal to discriminate other than those are may-issue states? In the 42 other states and Massachusetts, a significant percentage of the adult population has a carry permit or does not require a permit to carry a firearm. Massachusetts is one of the few states where a permit is required to merely own a firearm. Let's see. Florida First Court of Appeals followed the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in its logic. So many people are now sanctioned by state law to carry concealed. The mere presence of a firearm is not sufficient to establish reasonable suspicion for a police officer to detain someone, search them, or ask to see a permit. The decision follows precedent from the law on motor vehicle operation. A person may not be stopped simply to see if they have a valid license. The decision, while not binding in other states, bolsters argument and establishes a trend in treating carry of firearms as a normal legal activity. In Texas, for example, there's been a considerable argument that a person openly carrying does not establish probable cause for a law enforcement person to ask for a permit. The Florida court decision bolsters the argument. Florida is one of only 5 states where open carry is banned in most public places. It is unusual enough the dissenting judge in this case felt compelled to remark, open carrying of weapons is still a crime in Florida. The dissenting judge, J. Osterhaus, believed the mere sight of the firearm was sufficient basis for an arrest on an open carrying charge in spite of the wording of the law. The case for legal open carry in Florida will be bolstered by this decision. The political powers in Florida have used every political trick to defeat open carry while scheduling votes they can use to claim they support it. It is unlikely they will be able to continue to resist the political tide for restoring Second Amendment rights for all Americans, no matter what color or sex. So there you go. It is not sufficient probable cause to stop somebody just because you see a gun. I think that is a good step towards the normalization of carry of firearms.
See, I kind of want to get stopped when I'm walking the dog.
Why?
Because I want to, shame him because he's got a Glock and I've got a 1911. I've got a real man's gun and,
Oh, goodness. I'm carrying a Glock right now, dude, right?
Yeah, I know.
I'm right here, man. Say those things.
Yeah. It's a real man's gun.
Oh, good Lord.
I won't call you for bail, man. I won't call you for bail.
People can be asinine about this. Speaking of asinine. And now prepare yourself for another tale of stupidity in this episode of Moron of the Week. First up, the first contestant in Moron of the Week should be me because I don't have paper ready. What the hell, Budget? What is this? Yeah, that's something I can write on.
You need me to be the scribe?
Nah, I got it.
All right.
This is from...
I'm using a crayon. Does that count?
Well, yeah, you're a Marine, so obviously. FoxBaltimore.com by Chris Pabst, WBFF staff, Wednesday, June 10th, 2020. Yeah, it's a little bit past when I would normally take it, but I didn't get to this last week, so I wanted to do it today. I felt violated. Police search Baltimore County house over BB gun in virtual class. Baltimore. A Baltimore County family is warning other parents after they say police were called to their house over something that happened during a virtual school lesson. The incident is raising concerns over privacy and safety in the era of online learning. As a Navy veteran with 4 years of active duty, Courtney Lancaster has extensive knowledge of guns, how to use them, and how to store them. Her 11-year-old son, who owns BB guns, is a Boy Scout in 5th grade at Seneca Elementary School. He's just a very intellectual child, but he's all boy as well. He loves to be outside and play and ride his bikes and that sort of thing, Courtney told Project Baltimore. In his pursuit of becoming an Eagle Scout, Courtney says her son has learned how to shoot a BB gun and an airsoft gun. He's also taken 3 levels of archery lessons. His mother says that he stores his bow and guns on his wall in his bedroom. It's never been a problem until June 1st, when police pulled up outside her house. I had no idea what to think. I've never been in any legal trouble whatsoever. I've never had any negative encounter with law enforcement, said Courtney. I had no idea. I really didn't know what to think. Courtney says she was home with her son, who's been doing virtual learning since schools shut down in March. So I answered the door. The police officer he was very nice. He explained to me that he was coming to address an issue with my son's school, Courtney told Project Baltimore, and then explained to me that he was here to search for weapons in my home. And I consented to let him in. And then I, unfortunately, stood there and watched police officers enter my 11-year-old son's bedroom. Courtney was told someone had seen the guns in her son's bedroom during a Google Meet class on his laptop. I thought, this is outrageous. This is despicable, she said. I had no idea what in the world could this be over. BB guns never even once entered my mind. How many 11-year-old boys have BB guns? According to emails Courtney later exchanged with the school administrator, the screenshot was taken during the online class. The principal of Seneca Elementary was notified. Courtney says she was told the school safety officer then called police. I feel violated as a parent for my child, who's standing there with police officers in his room just to see the fear in his face, she said. Courtney says the police officers were in her home for about 20 minutes and found no violations. No laws were broken and no dangers present. They left without any further action, but Courtney wasn't done. Since that day, she has written school administrators, the superintendent, and the school board demanding answers. She says the principal initially compared bringing a weapon to a virtual class to bringing a gun to school. School safety officer contacted police because the weapon was not secured. Wow. She was told she could not see the screenshot of her son's bedroom because it's not part of his student record. It's absolutely scary to think about, Courtney said. Who are on these calls? Who do we have viewing your children and subsequently taking these screenshots that can be sent anywhere or used for any purpose? Project Baltimore reached out to Baltimore County Schools requesting an interview. We received this statement. Our longstanding policy is not to debate individual circumstances through the media. There are multiple ways for families to share concerns with us. In general terms, the safety of students and staff is our chief concern, whether we are meeting in classrooms or via continuity of learning. Said that and there's a screenshot of something that said he was in violation because he could not bring weapons to school, just as he could not bring weapons to virtual meets. Courtney says she understands the safety concerns, but no one called her first before involving police. There's no more trust. There have just been a series of lies and just no cooperation, she said. Now she worries about the future of virtual learning without clear policies in place. So what are the parameters? Where are the lines drawn? If my son is sitting in the kitchen island next to a butcher block, does that constitute a weapon? It's not allowed at school, right? So would my home then be searched because he's sitting next to a butcher block? I feel like parents need to be made aware of what the implications are and what the expectations are. So the first contestant in Moron of the Week is Seneca Elementary Administration. I can tell you what, there are two things that strike me about this. Number one, my response to the officer would have been get a warrant. Number two, the very next virtual class would have a ton of guns in the background. But that's just me. I'm kind of an asshole like that.
I think when the cop showed up to the door, I'd be like, is that a Glock? Oh, wait, I'm still going there?
You ain't right, Squib.
I know.
Here is a piece for our second nominee for Moron of the Week. This is from legalinsurrection.com. A piece by Fuzzy Slippers from Tuesday, June 16th. Media silence on armed anti-police protesters and private guards is deafening. Suddenly, confiscating guns isn't a Democrat priority when Democrats like the people carrying the guns. I'm so old I remember when the media would flop onto the nearest fainting couch at the sight of a protester exercising his or her Second Amendment rights. Remember the wails of horror, fear, and outrage we were treated to when Tea Party activists and, more recently, anti-lockdown protesters were shown lawfully openly carrying perfectly lawful firearms at a protest? The headlines were intended to shock the general public, to scare people, to incite anti-gun fervor. From Reuters in 2011, gun-toting Tea Party activists rally in Montana. From Think Progress 2010, gun rights and Tea Party activists encourage people to bring guns to New Mexico protests. From Time 2009, when protesters bear arms against healthcare reform. CNN 2009, man carries assault rifle to Obama protest. And it's legal. With regard to the last story, it was taken, you may recall, to Brazen Heights when MSNBC edited out the race of the gun-toting anti-Obama racist. He was black. This ended up being a disaster for the race-baiting anti-Second Amendment mainstream media. Remember how they showed the man with his big scary gun from the neck down? All while cropping out the man's head so you couldn't see their example of white people showing up with guns strapped to their waist was black. They wanted to obscure the fact that he was a black anti-Obama protester exercising his constitutional right to keep and bear arms in an open carry state. Who was stoking what? The frenzied anti-Second Amendment fear-mongering, and we know now, phony horror at seeing armed protesters reached an even more fevered pitch earlier this year when protesters showed up in various states to protest draconian and often illogical lockdown measures. From NBC News, hundreds of protesters, some carrying guns in the state capitol, demonstrate against Michigan's emergency measures. From The Guardian, armed protesters demonstrate against COVID-19 lockdown at Michigan Capitol. Forbes, armed protesters storm Michigan State House over COVID-19 lockdown. WAPO, those of you who don't know, that's Washington Post. The Tea Party is back and endangering lives. San Francisco Chronicle. Reopen California coronavirus protests identical to early Tea Party rallies, leader says. The Atlantic. The great irony of America's armed anti-lockdown protesters. They say they are demonstrating against tyranny, but they are in fact enjoying an extreme and dangerous sort of liberty. Funny how we don't hear any of that great irony talk amid the George Floyd protests, riots of 2020, and the Chaz zone in Seattle. This seems a moment ripe for, gee, what exactly are tyranny and fascism introspection, particularly when there are hundreds of images all over social media of armed anti-police protesters, including those guarding Chaz borders and now patrolling Chaz streets. And especially given that people of color have been forced to take up arms to protect their communities from these peaceful and festive arsonists, looters, and murderers. But we hear crickets from Democrats and their media stenographers who once thought the mere sight of any long gun, commonly mistaken for an AK-57 billion weapon of war, was cause to further restrict or even revoke one of, if not the, most prized rights of every American. Some local media wrote glowing reports about armed protesters protecting the Seattle East Precinct after it was abandoned by police, but mostly these stories about guns at protests or used to protect businesses against rioters are simply ignored or glossed over in passing because they don't fit the narrative. And it goes to show examples of this. The one we've seen before, it's armed African Americans protecting their businesses. Then it goes to show Black Lives Matter protesters in the Chaz with their guns. Let's see. A bunch of them. Suddenly, in fact, gun control is the one subject we hear nothing about. This is pretty surprising given that the 2020 Democrat presidential nominee hasn't been officially named yet, and one of their very favorite candidates, Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke, openly admitted, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. It's almost like Democrats and their media cohorts have another reason for trying to disarm the law-abiding citizens of this country. So the second nominee are the Democrat Party and its media lackeys. And then, of course, always having a permanent spot is Uncle Touchy, Joe Biden. Just for being Joe Biden. All right, Squib, who do you think? The Seneca Elementary Administration, the Dems and the media, or Joe Biden?
Joe Biden, only because in the commercial that keeps coming on before YouTube videos, he actually has a mini stroke at the very beginning of the commercial. So, I mean, the fact that nobody edited that out, he's moron of the week.
All right. Roll call. Seneca Elementary Administration, Dems Media, or Joe Biden?
Uncle, watch your kids and touch them.
Uncle, watch your kids and touch them? Joe Biden. All right, out there. This is where you folks in the chat have the ability to affect the fate of our nominees. You tell me what you think. Who deserves to be the moron of the week? The Seneca Elementary Administration, the Dems and their media lackeys, or Joe Biden? This is your chance to give me the votes. Chris Fulmer says Seneca Elementary Administration for sure. Jason Stewart says the school. M. Gabriel says Joe Biden. So far we got Uncle Touchy with 3, the elementary school with 2. Coffee, Guns and Ammo Astronomy says the school. Green Badger says the school. So far, we've got 4 for the school, 3 for Uncle Touchy, none for the Dems and their media lackeys. I guess that's pretty much just par for the course and should be expected, right? Jason Stewart is being a funny guy, says the Biden School of Democratic Media. Ozzy barks at the school. Who else we got out here? Come on, folks. Let's see some votes coming in. We got 5 for the school, 3 for Uncle Touchy. Scott P79 says the school. I think we're walking away because we got a 2-1 lead here. We got 6 for the school and 3 for Uncle Touchy. And the Dems and their media lackeys sucking hind teat, as they should. So I think I'm going to go ahead and cast my vote with the school because I think that is just some absolute foolishness. And we're going to go ahead and call this one Seneca Elementary School Administration. You are the much deserved morons of the week.
And there we had another tale of stupidity in this week's episode of Moron of the Week.
And now that we're starting to draw down to the end, we're going to move on to what is Roll Call 219's absolutely, positively, most bestest favorite segment of the show, self-defense shout-outs. For those of you who are new to the... I'm sorry, please go ahead and cheer. I think that's wonderful.
Yay!
For those of you who are new to the show or who have never stuck around to the end, self-defense shoutouts are not where I'm reveling in the proposition that the bad guy won the room temperature challenge by taking a dirt nap. It is where I'm reveling in the proposition that the good guy had the means, method, and opportunity to prevent the bad guy from making him take the dirt nap. First up, from stgeorgeutah.com. Pharmacy burglary in St. George foiled by owner with 9mm handgun. Let's go ahead and watch this video. 3 dudes trying to bust in. Our intrepid store owner sees what's going on, grabs his gun, and goes to defend his property. Meanwhile, Larry, Curly, and Mo finally get the door open. And scatter around like roaches looking for things to steal. When suddenly, they turn around and actually run like the roaches they are. Store owner comes out and he's on the phone. So the article says, 4 Southern California men were in for a surprise when they broke into a pharmacy in St. George early Tuesday morning. Instead of leading the bounty, they encountered an armed business owner who had been working late. Shortly before 3:30 a.m., officers responded to Sienna's Pharmacy on Dixie Drive on a reported business burglary and arrived to find a heavily damaged entrance door where the metal frame was bent from being pried open. According to documents filed in support of the arrests of the 4 men, officers spoke to the owner of the business who provided video surveillance footage of the incident as it unfolded minutes later. The footage revealed 3 males donning dark clothing and masks, prying the front door open using 2 crowbars before entering the pharmacy. Seconds later, the suspects were seen fleeing from the damaged door, followed by Steve Kirkland, the owner of the business. Kirkland told St. George News he was working inside the pharmacy when the incident took place. He was in one of the back rooms when he heard a loud crack coming from the front of the store, which he initially thought came from a falling shelf or something hitting the floor, he said. When he stood up to listen more closely, he said he realized it was somebody messing with my door, which is when he grabbed his 9mm handgun and called 911 as he headed for the back door. I thought I'd hear glass shatter as I headed for the rear exit, Kirkland said, but that never happened. Instead, he heard the lock snap inside the front door frame. Just as he turned around, 3 suspects entered the store, 2 of whom ran toward the rear of the building into the pharmacy section, he said, while the third ran toward the restrooms on the north side of the business. Kirkland was standing off to the side when the suspects approached the safe. I stood there just a few feet away from those guys with the gun pointed directly at them, and they had no idea I was even standing there. Just then, the emergency dispatch operator answered the 911 call. I knew I had to say something, so I yelled really loud, he said. The noise caught the attention of the suspects, who both turned toward me in such a look of shock and fear it was crazy. Both intruders immediately ran toward the front entrance as one of the suspects continued yelling, "He has a gun! He has a gun!" Kirkland said. The third suspect also heard the commotion and ran out of the building with Kirkland behind him. Once outside, the pharmacy owner attempted to get the license plate number of the black Ford Fusion the men were driving, but it was so dark over there I could only tell it was an out-of-state plate. At this point, he also realized there was a fourth suspect, the driver who was waiting in the car and who sped off with a couple of the guys still hanging halfway out of the car. Upon arrival, authorities sent out an attempt to locate notification for the Ford after it fled south on Dixie Drive, while additional officers were called in and began scouring the area in search of the car. Detectives also reported to the pharmacy, where they found a shoe tread impression inside the business that was consistent with a Nike Jordan, as well as red and blue transfer paint located on the inside of the entrance door locking mechanism, indicating that 2 crowbars were likely used during the incident, Kirkland said. Washington City Police Chief Jason Williams told St. George News that while this was going on, officers in Washington County heard the broadcast and proceeded to check on a number of pharmacies scattered throughout the city as a precaution in case the suspects decided to hit another one after the failed attempt at St. George. Within minutes, an officer staged near Stuckey Family Pharmacy on Telegraph saw a black Ford that matched the description put out by dispatch approaching the parking lot and pulled the vehicle over across from the pharmacy. As the officer approached, Williams said, he noticed there were 4 men inside consistent with the information relayed to the police, and at that point, additional officers were called to assist. Stuckey Pharmacy is one of the businesses hit 3 times during a string of pharmacy burglaries reported throughout Washington and Iron counties in 2017, Williams added. While speaking with the driver, the officer detected the odor of marijuana and then noticed 2 crowbars inside of the car, one red and one blue, which is when officers conducted a search of the vehicle. In addition to the 2 crowbars spotted initially, officers also found a set of bolt cutters, a sledgehammer, and a yellow crowbar, as well as clothing that matched the items seen in the video footage, including dark jackets, face masks, and gloves. They also found a pair of Nike Jordan shoes with a tread pattern that was consistent with the shoe impression found by detectives at the scene in St. George. The 4 suspects from Southern California, Donovan Moore, 32, of Compton, and 30-year-old Randy Johnson, 26-year-old Daquan Hamilton, and 23-year-old John Davis, all from Anaheim, were arrested and transported to Purgatory Correctional Facility, which is an awesome name, by the way. I think it's great. Each man faces multiple charges, including 1 third-degree felony count each of burglary and criminal mischief, as well as 3 misdemeanor offenses, 1 count of possession of burglary tools and possession of marijuana and paraphernalia. Hamilton also faces a 2nd misdemeanor count of possession of a controlled substance after jail staff allegedly found a package containing a white substance on his person during the booking process, which the suspect said was cocaine, the report states. The entrance door to Sienna's pharmacy was heavily damaged. The repair costs were estimated to be between $1,500 and $2,000, but the losses suffered during the rash of burglaries in 2017 was greater, Kirkland said, after his store was one of the first hit during the spree that year. So there you go, an armed business owner who didn't have to fire a shot to defend himself. You know, the antis will often point at, people at saying that the amount of people who defend themselves is low because, more people would be killed. But you don't have to fire a shot to defend yourself at all.
These guys came from California, a state where most people don't have guns, drove about 9 hours on Interstate 15, crossed 2 state lines, and went into Utah, where most people on of the week.
From June 17th, 2020, updated June 17th. It was posted June 15th. CPL holder fatally shoots man aiming gun at motorists on Michigan highway, police said. This guy almost made it to balls of steel. Matter of fact, he may just be our default winner of balls of steel. Eaton County, Michigan. A Michigan man allegedly seen firing gunshots into the air and pointing a handgun at motorists in the middle of a roadway was shot and killed by a passerby with a concealed pistol license. The Eaton County Sheriff's Office said it received multiple reports from citizens about a black male dressed in a black hoodie and jeans who was firing off rounds and brandishing the pistol in the middle of the 6500 block of Saginaw Highway at 8:25 a.m. on Monday. As deputies were responding, 911 dispatchers advised that the man had been shot, police said. Upon arrival, deputies found a man with apparent gunshot wounds and a handgun next to his body. He died at the scene. Preliminary investigation indicates that a 22-year-old resident of Delta Township had been traveling east on Saginaw Highway when he stopped near Brookside Drive. The male standing in the highway then pointed the pistol at him, according to police. The 22-year-old, a CPL holder, fired his pistol from his vehicle, striking the male, identified as 26-year-old with the last known address in Walker. Further information will be updated pending next of kin notification. Eaton County detectives are investigating at the scene. If you know anything, give them a call. So, good for you, using your firearm to preserve life. It's funny how that works. They're not all used for bad.
This is right outside of Lansing, the state capital, where our evil governor lives. For those people out there who keep telling me Michigan is an anti-gun state, I beg to differ.
Used by two very different hands for two very different purposes. 17th, 2020. Attempted robbery victim shoots man in self-defense. Nashville, Tennessee, WTVF. A would-be robber was injured in a shootout when the person he tried to rob fired back. Metro Nashville police officials say the man approached someone in the parking lot of Opry Mills Mall, showed them his gun, and demanded their things. But that's when police say the person also pulled out a gun in self-defense, and the two exchanged gunfire. The suspect was hit in the knee and ran away, but police say he was taken into custody shortly after the incident in front of the hotel and convention center. He was transported to the hospital for injuries that were not life-threatening. The attempted robbery victim was not injured. Once again, we have the same illustration. Same type of tool, two different hands wielding them for entirely different purposes. One to attempt to take, one to preserve. It's not the tool, it's the hand that holds it. And on that note, we are going to sweep the floors, roll up the awnings, and lock the doors, folks. I want to thank my esteemed panel of guests, those that are still here, and those that have left as well. We started off with Night Strike here, but he had to go. Go on over to guntube.org and check his stuff out. If you guys like what you're seeing here with me using the chamber to facilitate this panel discussion, think about going on over to Patreon, to GunTube's Patreon, and being a patron. I kick in money every month to help support this that I use. I figure if I'm going to use it, I'm going to enjoy it, I should help kick in and support it. So go check that out. Also go check out Calaveras 32 Special. See what his content's all about, and check out his videos. Speaking of check out their videos, check out the two that are still here, both Squibload and Roll Call. Squib, is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Anything you'd like to plug tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to plug another channel. It's the Arizona Ghostwriters channel, and the host of the channel, his handle is Santee. He does videos about 19th century history, Old West history. He's out in Tucson, and he's a reenactor. He does Old West reenactments, and he's a bit of a historian. And he's got some friends out there that work at a theme park in Tucson called Trail Dust Town, and they run the Wild West Stunt Show there. And because of the whole COVID thing, the stunt show has been, the whole park has been vacant, and they're in danger of losing the stunt show. So tomorrow night he's doing a live broadcast. They're going to perform a stunt show there for him, and he's gonna broadcast it on his channel live. He will be downloading it as a video for playback later. But during the show, he'll have a link to PayPal if you'd like to donate some money to keep the the Pinnacle Peak Pistoleros operational while the park is shut down. They're still waiting for tourism to come back over there. He's also going to have a physical mailing address if you're not into technology and you want to mail something if you're so inclined. But it'll be at 5:30 p.m. Central, 6:30 p.m. Mountain, 7:30 p.m. Wait, let me 5:30 p.m. Pacific.
Just call me Cart G.
6:30 p.m.
No,
Mountain.
When I called you
7:30 p.m.
Rotten
Central,
Cart,
and 8:30 p.m.
there's a
Eastern,
difference.
the only time zone that
Well, I
matters.
take umbrage
on
to
the
that.
Arizona Ghost
Flip
Riders
that.
channel. It's two separate words.
I chucked a link to the channel out in the chat. Go check them out. They do some pretty cool stuff. I've watched some of his videos, and they're I like it.
He's just doing a fundraiser to try to get them funds to keep them going until they can start getting the crowds in there and start bringing in the money. And if you think about it, this is a place you can take your family to, and it's a real fun thing to see. There's I've watched gunfights in the street in Oatman, Arizona. That's pretty cool too. And it's just something that is entertaining. It's educational a little bit, and tourism has just been hit hard by this COVID thing. So if you feel so inclined, check out the video or catch it on replay and get an example of one of their different shows that they do, because they do different shows. And it might be something you might want to take your family to one day.
Go check it out, folks. Lend a hand if you can. Roll call. Is there anything you would like to leave us with? Anything you would like to plug, sir?
Thanks for having me like usual. Good show. You can find me on YouTube at Roll Call 219. You can find me on Instagram at Roll Call 219, and you can also find me on Twitter at Roll Call 219/2010, where I tweet some of our glorious politicians and make sure they know that we are aware of what they're doing. Also, I'll throw out some truth videos on there. And there's be links to those videos, and you can watch them and make your own decision at your discretion. Other than that, go check out my Instagram. I just posted another DTOM meal. I do cook a lot nowadays, and I'm making some pretty good meals. And go check that out. Maybe give you some ideas for your next meal that's going to be freedom. So,
Hey,
again,
Squid.
thanks for having me.
Squib, throw your link out in the channel. Throw your link out in the chat to your channel.
All right. I don't like to, but all right.
Throw it out there.
Here.
There you go, Chris. There's Squib's link. Thank you both for being here. I appreciate it. Everybody involved here, whether it be on the panel or in the chat, you make this show what it is. I just kind of guide things and decide which direction we're going to go. You guys are the ones getting out and pushing. I am, as always, humbled and amazed that you've chosen to spend your time with us on this Friday night when you could be doing absolutely anything else in the world, but you're here. Particularly those of you who are here from start to finish. Holy cow, I can't believe it. I started this show as a 1 hour thing, get in, get out, get done. And it's kind of grown into something, some would say bloated, but it's grown into more than that. We started at 11:30 and here on the East Coast, it's 2:05. So, wow. I can't believe it. And there are some of you that are still here from the start to the finish. Humbled. We always have to be vigilant against the forces of tyranny who would rob us from our freedoms. We need to make sure that we are holding them accountable and letting them know that our eyes are ever upon them. Tell your Congress critters and elected representatives what you think. They should never have any doubt what you're going to say on any particular issue. Send them snail mail, email, telephone, telegraph, carrier pigeon, smoke signals, heliograph, semaphore, bicycle messengers, drum messages. Do whatever you have to do to let them know what you think, and never, ever, ever give up the fight. I'll see you guys on the next one.